If you're like me, you know Dikembe Mutombo from his legendary shot blocking and defensive play in the NBA. Or maybe you know him from his iconic finger shake from TV commercials. But did you know this NBA Hall of Famer wasn't just a shot blocking titan, but also a linguistic marvel? In this video, let's take a look at the first NBA Global Ambassador's position on the importance of learning languages and how they transformed his life. By the end of this video, I hope his words inspire you to continue your journey on learning Spanish. As you will see, learning to speak Spanish is only the beginning for you, but you don't have to take my word for it. Let's see what Mutombo said about what being multilingual meant to him.
My languages experience come from just being from Africa. There's nobody who from Africa today who only speak one language, because when we are born, our mom speak a different language, maybe the grandmom speak a different language, daddy speak a different language, then there's a national language. Depending if both of your grandparents did come from the same village or came from the north and the south. So you might end up learning like 3 or 4 languages just at home before you even put the foot outside or in the classroom.
Wow, right out the gate, Mutombo hit us with some heavy information. Can you imagine learning 3 to 4 languages even before setting foot in a classroom? That statement by Mutombo right there depicts how rich the linguistic tapestry on the continent of Africa really is. I mean, if you think about it, it really puts into perspective how diverse other countries are in the world when it comes to languages. Okay, now let's jump back in and see what else he has to say here.
Will you be speaking another language, which is the French? And by the time you get to high school, you have to learn a second official language, which is English. So
now I know throughout various countries of Africa, like the Democratic Republic of Congo, like where Dikembe Mutombo was from, multilingualism is a way of life. Adding 2 or more languages on top of the 3 or 4 that you already know before you even get to school is absolutely fascinating. So let's jump back in and see what else Dikembe tells us about when it comes to learning languages.
I've been fortunate to speak more than 7 languages. I speak English, French, Portuguese, little bit of Spanish. I can understand Italian and other African languages. Some of the language, I felt like I have to learn it. Some of them I picked it up since I was young, since I was like 9 years old.
Over 7 languages. What we have to think about is this. This was recorded 6 years ago when he did an interview with Cambridge University. And for Dikembe and many others like himself, this basically means as a young boy, he was already navigating multiple languages on a daily basis. So essentially, this early exposure not only made him a linguistic marvel, but more than likely enhanced his cognitive abilities, his social skills, and his cultural awareness as a young boy. Now, coming up, I want you to key in on how Mutombo went from just French to the other languages that he now speaks fluently. Keep in mind, this was 6 years ago. So after this 6 years, he's also acquired more languages.
Like nobody speaks Portuguese in Congo, but my neighbors, we have like about hundreds neighbors in my community where I was growing up. They all was from Angola. They were the people who fled the civil war in Angola and they came to the capital city of Kinshasa in Congo. So when they came in the 70s, all those people were just speaking Portuguese. They didn't know the local language in Kinshasa. So the children were trying to play soccer with us and they would speak to us in Portuguese, and we were trying to find a way to understand them and them understanding us. So we ended up developing that bridge, and we didn't want to have a language barrier, and they ended up working very well.
So Dikembe brought up a pivotal point in his childhood, which ultimately played a huge role in his learning of Portuguese as a kid. Personally, I never knew up until this point in this interview the Angolan refugees coming to Kinshasa or to Congo during the 70s. Totally beyond me. But now it makes perfect sense why he knows Portuguese. With Angola as a neighboring country to the east, there was no common language that could connect the 2 countries. So ride with me on this one. So the bridge that initially built that connection for these kids like Mutombo, his friends, and the Angolan kids who were refugees in Congo was not a common language or a language that both of them could understand, but it was the language of sports. It was their love for soccer. Oftentimes, for someone to be able to develop their skills in a particular language outside of their normal language or languages, in the case of Dikembe, it usually relies upon some sort of interest outside of just the language, a motivating factor, if you will. For Dikembe and his friends and the Angolan kids, it was soccer. So I ask you, what is your motivating factor to learn Spanish or any other languages that you may be wanting to learn? I've got my story, but we don't have all day. Hey, if you're gaining value from today's video, make sure to give it a like and definitely share it with somebody that you know that may have some interest in learning the other side of Dikembe Mutombo, or even understanding that how he acquired his languages. His life story can actually be beneficial to someone else. So make sure you share it out if you know somebody that needs to see it. Okay, let's get back to the interview with Dikembe Mutombo. So this part right here in the interview is probably the most crucial point in the interview, when the interviewer asked Dikembe, was Portuguese hard for him to learn? Look at what he says right here, because this is very true, and I want to make sure he says it first, and then I'm going to give you some of my feedback on what happens for me.
And would you say Portuguese is the hardest language that you've had to learn, or is it one of the others?
It was easy. Portuguese is so language because it's close to French, and when you speak Portuguese, it's so easy to speak Spanish. Easy also to speak Italian.
So what he just said is super relevant to what I'm getting ready to tell you. So I started out with Spanish as my first language outside of my first language, whatever, 1, 2, 3, fourth language that I had been exposed to as a kid. First language, of course, was English. The second language was Korean. And then the third language was German. But then Spanish was actually the one that I grabbed onto and was like, oh, I love this, right? So anyways, his first one was French, right? And then, of course, we know the story about him learning Portuguese. Well, then he said, he just told us that, if you can learn Portuguese, if French is so close to Portuguese, Portuguese is so close to Spanish, Spanish is so close to Italian, which is totally true. But I'm going to take it a step further. So, of course, we're in the age of gamified apps of learning, right? And so I first started out, I think I learned Italian, but I didn't have the love for it. There was no interest in it like that for me. The way I actually went about and reversed that, and I never did want to learn French. I'll do those on the back end. But essentially, it breaks down to this. We have the Romance languages, right? And of course, if you can learn French, you can learn Portuguese, you can learn Portuguese, you can learn Spanish. For me, it was Spanish, Portuguese. All right. My third one is a sleeper. Most people don't even realize it. Romanian. So that's the third one that I'm working on right now. Out of the bunch of 5, we've got French, Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, and we've got Romanian. So putting all those together, if you can learn one, you can learn all 5. Let's jump back into the interview with Dikembe Mutombo.
I think the language is great. It's and it allowed you to travel the world. I'm working out to learn my Chinese now. As much as I go to China every year, I learn myself how to say a few words, trying to learn Japanese at the same time. It's fun. When you can go to a different country, be able to say things on their language, it makes people more appreciative of you, who you are. They know that you just didn't come walk around their country, but you want to talk to them and you want to feel home.
Now, I know you're probably like me when he said language allows you to travel the world. You looked at him like, and it's actually the second part of his explanation that made this make sense. When you learn the language or languages, by the way, I know you caught that slight flex he hit us with where he was talking about learning Chinese and Japanese at the same time. I know you're like, but actually that's what I'm doing with Portuguese and Romanian because they're so similar. Now, I don't know if Chinese and Japanese are similar. I've heard that they're not at all. But needless to say, when you do learn the language or languages of where you travel to, the locals appreciate it more because they don't feel like you're just coming to cruise their lands. You're actually taking an active learning effort to appreciate their culture and their country even more by learning the language. Learning the language allows you to get a deeper experience, a deeper connection to the country that you're traveling to, instead of having to stay the course of typical tourist activities. Okay, let's jump back into the interview with Dikembe, where he talks about his language learning tactics and techniques that he used for learning English.
If you are committed to be successful in life, you will see a great result. If you are committed to be a good student, you will see a good result.
Now, the nature of this interview was actually for college students, right? But there's definitely some truth to his responses for all of us who are learning languages. You know, Dikembe spoke about being committed to being successful, to be a good student. So how can we relate this to, say, learning Spanish? Simply put, are you putting yourself in the best position to become fluent in Spanish? Are you crafting a plan that you can stick to? Are you seeking guidance when you hit a plateau? These are all the things that we have to consider in order to become a better Spanish speaker.
You've had a very successful career, both on the basketball court and off, through your humanitarian work. Have you found speaking several languages has been beneficial to this?
I think it's been beneficial for the fact that I have a job that allowed me to travel around the world and trying to communicate to our young people and our youth to the language that way they can understand me, where they can put in action right away. And I think that we have been fortunate enough to accomplish as being an NBA Global Ambassador.
This was a huge statement by Mutombo. This statement was for all the piñatas. I know that's not a thing, but it sounds good. So, knowing a language, or languages in his case, can open up opportunities that you wouldn't normally have as a monolingual speaker, somebody that only speaks one language. And these opportunities could reveal themselves in a variety of ways. Business opportunities, philanthropic opportunities, friendships, relationships, situationships. But I'm just saying, knowing more than one language opens up doors that you wouldn't normally be able to open up just by knowing one specific language. In a lot of our cases, that's English. For example, the other day I was trekking around the city trying to find a soccer jersey for like a spirit day for my daughter, and I was in line at one of the local sporting goods stores, and there was an older gentleman standing there with his cell phone showing a picture of what he needed, which was like a Nike ski mask. And when the customer service representative was asking him, yeah, well, what do you need this specific type? And the older gentleman responded with, I know speak English. And I could tell he had a Spanish accent. This was one of those opportunities that revealed themselves to me, because it shows that because I spoke Spanish, I had the opportunity to help someone else out. So I told the older gentleman, hey, don't worry, I'm gonna help you out here. I'm going to translate what the customer service representative is trying to tell you, and then I can relay your information to him. And when I told him this, his eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. He was super appreciative of me helping him out because I knew both languages. And then of course, on the flip side, when I helped him out, the customer service representatives were standing there like, oh, we are so thankful to have somebody actually helped him out and identify what specifically he was trying to say about that Nike ski mask. So when Mutombo talked about knowing these languages and going around the world and helping the youth out so that they could put things into action a lot quicker because he was able to communicate better, and he's absolutely correct. Being able to communicate with somebody in their language allows the course of action to happen that much faster. I mean, you don't have to know 10,000 words in Spanish. Only about 300 Spanish words are used on the daily by native Spanish speakers. No one's asking you to write a thesis or a report in Spanish. Essentially, all you want to be able to do is just get in the game and show what you know. Okay, now let's jump back into the interview to see what else Dikembe tells us.
Language learning is very fun because language is an art that inspires people. And when you feel like a melody as you're learning a language, as you start speaking French, as you start speaking, you can feel the melody playing in your brain.
Okay, Dikembe tried to get deep on us there for a second, right? But essentially, I have to agree with him in regards to language being an art. You know, I always wondered why in elementary school, in junior high school, or middle school, the class was never really called English class. It was called language arts. It wasn't until I heard this interview with Mutombo talking about language being an art form that all of this came full circle and made perfect sense. Although Mutombo related his statement to French, I'm going to relate mine to Spanish. I've always approached speaking Spanish as an art form, similar to like a painter or an artist. I had to be equipped with the skills and craft required to effectively communicate, as well as to be able to create a masterpiece out of thin air. In my case, to be able to carry a conversation that's comprehensible for both parties involved. Okay, now let's jump back into the interview.
And do you have any tips for anyone who's about to start learning a language?
Practice. You need to find the time by yourself where you can practice and looking at yourself in the mirror. First of all, you want to know if you can understand yourself, and repeat yourself as much as you can.
Now, I've been saying this for over 24 years, but hopefully as an NBA legend, Dikembe might ring some bells for someone saying the same exact thing. Now, although the first activity that he utilized to become an English speaker sounds a little bit archaic or out of date, it's still very effective. The outcome is what's most important. Can you understand you? So essentially what you need to do is expose yourself to more spoken Spanish. For example, you can try mimicking the Spanish that you hear. Okay, let's see what else Mutombo has to say here.
You're not going to wait just until you go to a room full of people. You say, okay, that's when I'm going to speak. But you'll be able to pick up maybe the newspaper from whatever language you're learning and trying to read it. It will improve your languages. But you being able to listen to the radio, it will improve your language, and watch TV or TV show. Those are the things that you need to do to improve yourself.
Now, the 3 activities that he mentioned are stellar. These are things that I tell all of my clients and all of my students. Read the newspaper, read articles online, listen to music in the target language or listen to music in Spanish, watch movies that actually are Spanish speaking movies, not the dubbed versions, right? You can essentially start off with the dubbed versions, but you want to try to access authentic materials or authentic movies in that particular language, i.e. Spanish for us, because that's going to help train your ear on the dialects that you're listening to, as well as picking up the nuances of the language. All of these things combined are going to help you make waves of improvement in being able to communicate effectively. Now, as we land the plane, if you found value in today's video, make sure you subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments below if you want to see more reactions to things like this or videos or interviews like this where people are talking about some of the effective ways to become a better language speaker or a better Spanish speaker, and I'll definitely queue those up for you. And if you're ready to jump into some more content to become a better Spanish speaker, check out this video right here that's going to help you start from scratch and get you to being able to have a conversation, a preliminary or basic conversation in Spanish, and I'll see you there. Soy Profe Don Omar. Nos vemos.